to the WTF Sunderland podcast for our final pre-Wembley show. It's just 48 hours or less, depending on when you're listening to this, until the lads walk out of Wembley with only Sheffield United standing between them and a return to the Premier League. We spoke to Phil Smith from the Sunderland Echo yesterday and regular contributor Dave Lawrence, and today we'll bring you, first and foremost, another regular contributor, Peter Oliver. Peter, how are you doing?
Ni hao from Beijing at the international WTF podcast. I'm over here working, but making sure that I can get the lads watched on Saturday from, I believe, Guangzhou, if the plan goes ahead. I have found a pub that has promised me that they will be showing it.
You can probably tell how unprepared and also relaxed I am from this podcast. I just came from an afternoon slumber because the heat is about 40 degrees here in Portugal. And I'm going to be honest, I never relax, but I even called you Peter Oliver. I've never done that, like ever. That's how chilled out I am. I'm going full Sunday names.
Oh, there you go. It's nice to get me full title almost.
Almost. We'll leave the G for as a surprise for the listeners. What could it mean?
I'm gonna say, if you do want to find out what it means, do click on the link that Graham just shared on the WTF podcast Twitter feed, in which you'll find my just giving page for the Great Sun, which does have my full Sunday name attached to it.
Fantastic. Good plug there. Enjoyed it. Yes, the link's on the page and all that. But before we get further into potential Wembley nerves, which I'll be honest, I don't have, we have another member of the Sunderland Echo with us, Copley. It's been a while. Or James Copley even, sorry. See, I'm giving you your non-Sunday name. James Copley, sorry. How are you doing? You all right?
I'm good. I've been called a lot worse than that recently as well, so I'll take it. I feel a bit inadequate though, because obviously you've had Phil on and he's the main guy, isn't he? So I'm the number two, and then Peter's out in China and I'm in Hendon, so I was trying to think of what my greeting would be as opposed to Peter's, because he's just so eloquently spoke a bit of Chinese or Mandarin, whatever that was, and I'm thinking, what's me colloquial term for Hendon? It's probably like you are eat lads or something like that. So you are eat from Hendon.
We basically got the apparently the balding version from the Sunderland Echo and the hairy version, so we split them up into two separate ones. Sorry, Phil. Sorry.
Too much hair for one podcast.
There's a hair-based question coming up later on as well. I think you might know what it is because it's Twitter-based. But Pete, I'll come to you first. Look, we're actually hours away from the final act of the season, the do or death, the destiny or despair. I'm incredibly calm, but I'll ask you anyway, how are the nerves holding up?
Yeah, absolutely. No bother. Absolutely holding it together. Cool as a cube. I can't even get through the sentence. I'm a mess, mate. I wish I wasn't. I really wish I wasn't, because I'm actually over here doing some quite serious stuff for my actual job. And I have talked about Sunderland to just about anybody who will listen. And if there are any Chinese speakers out there, my but I have stretched it as far as I can possibly get to convince everybody that this is the biggest thing that's happening this weekend. I don't know, honestly, how well it's been received. And I think some of them have thought I'm having a breakdown. But I mean, let's face it, I kind of am at some stages, but I'm shot, man. I'm absolutely shot. I wish I wasn't. I wish I could say I'm absolutely confident, because I do believe in these boys and I'm a huge fan of this team and this group, the way that they play together, the way they celebrate it together, and the way they clearly are a very tight unit. I've got to have belief in them because of who they are, but no, that's who I am. I'm so nervous about this. Also, and I will get this one in as well, this may mean, if this all goes as it should, I may never be able to watch Sunderland in a major final ever again, because me and my dad have been to see them. We were there in '98 and at the wasn't the Papa John's, was it? It was, no, anyway, we were there at the AFL Trophy in 2019, obviously when Sunderland lost. My dad was there in '73. And I wasn't there when they went up last year. So just by a process of elimination, I'm the problem. So if Sunderland win, I'm never allowed to watch them in a major final live again. So yeah, I mean, as much as I hope they go up, I'll always find somewhere to do as long as they win.
There is a question about superstitions coming up, but look, just to make it clear, I've packed a yellow shirt to wear Trafalgar beforehand. I'm going to Trafalgar, even though I'm not too sure I want to go for a rave. If I'm completely honest, not really my kind of thing. But I'm wearing yellow, going to Trafalgar because that's what I did last time. I'm wearing a retro version of a yellow shirt at Wembley. I am raging that I'm having to get trained back the next day because every time I've done that, we've lost. and the time I didn't. Last time we won. Let's not concentrate on that too much. I even believe Eleanor and Rory, obviously formerly of Wise Men Say, currently of Wise Men Say, because they got separate trains last time, they've booked separate trains yet again. So superstition is in full swing. But let me tell you, it doesn't matter. And that's why I'm quite calm about it. Superstition's all a bit silly, really. I wore a white Fred Perry shirt all the way through the Carling Cup run, including the same jacket, which was camouflage. Yet weirdly, people could still see me. And it ended up where we just got beat anyway because Yaya Toure fancied putting a cross in the back, the top corner from about 45 yards out. But look, as you can see, Copley, I'm excited more than I am nervous. I think seeing Sunderland win at Wembley 3 years ago today, at the time of speaking, just made me go, well, I've had that memory. Sunderland won at Wembley. I can now enjoy going to see Sunderland at Wembley. And I thought that at the time and thought, oh, next time we go, I'll still be nervous. And obviously this game's much bigger because it takes us back to where I believe we belong. But for me, I'm very, very chilled out with the underdogs. We were 20 points behind Sheffield United. There's no rhyme or reason why that matters because it's a one-off game. But I feel very chilled out and looking forward to the occasion. And it sounds daft, looking to see family, friends, catch up with you, have a pint with whoever's there, speak to people like I did last time, and just have a day that celebrates Sunderland. And hopefully it's a win. But I imagine you might be feeling a bit more nervous, James, because it feels like I'm the only one that's as chilled out as myself.
Well, I'll come to that in a second, but I'll give the listeners a couple of pieces of superstition just to help them sleep at night. One of which is that I'm staying in exactly the same hotel as I did for the 2022 final. So that's something. The other bit of superstition is a bit more relevant to Sunderland, and that is that Sunderland will be housed in the West Stand at Wembley. Sunderland have never lost when they've played in the West Stand at Wembley. All of the other times they've been housed in the East, in which they've lost. They were housed in the West in 1973, 1937. I believe in the Papa Johns as well. The fans would have been in the West, and obviously Wickham as well. Couple that with Sheffield United's Wembley record being absolutely horrendous as well. That is helping me get through the evenings. I must admit, I don't think it actually means much, but it's sort of whatever helps you get through the days. And in terms of the day or the days, I'm really, really looking forward to Trafalgar Square, Covent Garden. For whatever reason over the years, and I first went to Wembley in 2014 as a fan, I missed out on Covent Garden because it wasn't really planned. If you remember back, Covent Garden wasn't really planned, or at least I wasn't aware of it. It sort of became this organic thing, didn't it? And then afterwards you look at the pictures and you think, my God, Covent Garden was class. And then the other times I've been to Wembley, so this will be my let me think, this will be my fifth time at Wembley. Yeah, fifth time at Wembley this is. The rest of the time I've missed Covent Garden and Trafalgar Square for whatever reason. The last time it was my nanny's funeral in Wales the night before. So that was a bit of a nightmare, having to come over from Wales on the day of the game. And then the other times I was with family, so I've missed out on that. Whereas this time, I've actually been assigned to cover the scenes. So I'm really, really looking forward to that, sort of meeting up with people, documenting it, the old fan galleries and the old videos and all that sort of stuff. So I'm just excited now, to be honest, because I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into that, really looking forward to getting stuck into the atmosphere, seeing the faces around, just bumping into random people that you haven't seen in Sunderland for 5 years, but your best mates at Trafalgar Square and at Wembley. It's going to be class. In terms of the game, I'm actually quite relaxed. I must say, Graham, I'm sort of bordering on what you are. The only thing that's sort of annoying is how slow the week's going. It's probably a bit different for you because you're abroad and having a nice time, but for me, I've listened to all of the content, I've done all of my work, all of my conversations are about this game, and I would just quite like to get to the weekend now because, yeah, I'm bored of waiting. I just want it to be upon us.
Yeah, I get that. Do you know what I'm excited for? And I think people will know that I hate this stupid podcast and I hope that it dies very soon. 500 episodes is 500 far too many. So please stop subscribing and fucking stop listening immediately so I can get back to having a regular life where no one gives a shit about this stupid podcast. However,
congratulations, by the way, on the 500. That's massive, that. Fully deserved.
Stop fucking encouraging us. Stop it.
But please unsubscribe anyway.
Yes, exactly. You're well trained. You're well trained. My favorite episode we've ever done, and not because of how many listens it's had. I don't even know how many listens it's had, or any part of that. Was the Wembley episode we did at Wickham. Me and Brad came up with the idea at the time to all meet up in Trafalgar Square, and Dave was like, look, I'll come along. We all ended up getting tickets, the people of the podcast at that point, and we said, should we just meet up and just record? And look, if it goes to shit, should we just can it and just put it in the bin and pretend we never recorded it? As it was, the day was great. Me and Brad went sort of half time down I was going to say the gantry, not the gantry. We went to the concourse, and we said, look, we'll do a bit at half time. We were 1-0 up at the time, so you're going, oh, maybe this could be good. And then got to full time, and I completely and utterly forgot to record. And I kind of was singing Wonderwall, and I had to get a quick train back because we had a wedding the next day. Completely forgot to record, and I went, oh shit, Ashley, I can't end the podcast without going, we won, brilliant. And I've missed it now because we've rushed and we're on the train, and we're now basically on the train going back to Carlisle, which is where the wedding was in Dumfries. So we went back to Carlisle, and I ended up doing like this bit on my own where I was like, Ash, will you just jump on with us and just talk about the emotion of the day? She was like, absolutely not. No, I don't want any part of this podcast. Please don't put me on. And it ended up where I ended up speaking about like the emotions of it, like quite freely, just kind of with my head stuck in between my legs on the train. I think it was a Lumo, I think at the time. That came out a little bit worse than it was meant to, but here we are. And be honest, as much as I don't like doing this podcast and hate this podcast and hope it dies soon, that was like a moment when I didn't actually mind it so much. And I like listening back to that sometimes because it's a memory of the day. So there's part of me where I've decided whether win, lose, or draw, I'm going to do exactly the same thing again, because I think if we lose it, yeah, does it suck? Absolutely. Yeah, I don't like the idea of getting beat ever. I didn't like the idea of getting beat off Swansea in a meaningless game a few weeks back, but we were. This game will be a kick in the teeth, especially if we lose by a poor result. But I think for me, Wembley was always about getting that win. And it's kind of like when I watch England in the Euros or the World Cup, I'm so desperate for us to win something just so I can go, right, I've done it. It's brilliant. I can die now. It's fine. The podcast can die. I can die. And everyone will be happy. It'll be all right. It was like that with Sunderland when we won against Wickham, and listening back to it, like you can hear the relief in my voice at the end. And I know a few people said, oh, I like that Wembley thing he did at the end. And if there's anything I'd like you to like in the podcast that we've ever done, it would be that, because that was like probably the rawest I've felt. So I'm really looking forward to doing that again, and hopefully it ends up the same way. But I'm going to release it anyway because of how much I enjoyed like random people, random songs kicking off, and then Brad randomly going, "Oh, look at that lad! He's on Nelson's column," just at random points during the podcast. So I'm really, really excited to do that bit, and I think that's what's calming me down a lot, is that the result isn't irrelevant. But I think I've learned the older I get that, I think I've said this before, Sunderland are probably not going to win the Premier League on a regular basis. And if we do, it's probably because we've been taken over by someone that I don't think I would respect very much, for want of a better word. And therefore, success for me at Sunderland comes in moments and in days, and Dan Ballard's big, massive deck chair folding head. Moments like that are what Sunderland's all about for me. So, like, this is going to be a nice big celebration of, I think what Sunderland's all about, and I'm really excited for it. But that's my favourite Wembley memory, to be honest, is actually recording that podcast and the day and the relief that came with it. So I wanted to throw this one at you as well, Pete. You haven't seen us win at Wembley, obviously, so thank God you're not going. But what's your favourite Wembley memory? Like, if there's something you can pick out and go, yeah, that was one I'll remember on, I was going to say on my deathbed, but it's getting really, really grim, isn't it, at this point?
Yeah,
what's the thing you'll remember?
I'll try and bring the light to your shade. I'll try and bring some light to your shade. It actually comes from 98, just because it was the first time I was there with my dad. It was it's a game that I can watch over and over again whenever it's replayed on Sky, or even when it's replayed, sometimes it turns up on YouTube and things like that, and it comes to my attention. I mean, if I'm honest, it's probably why I'm kind of the way I am in my old mentality to everything, because like it was such a formative and shaping moment for us. Like 98, how old was I? I would have been 15. And that whole thing, I mean, I was convinced when it's Quinn's goal in the an extra time. I thought it was golden goal. Everybody around us thought it was golden goal. Somerby's goal, thank you. Somerby's goal. I mean, and it's the first time I can think I jumped in a crowd like that. I remember jumping up in the air and going about 4 rows forward, and then having to climb back up to get to my dad, just going with people around us going, "It's a golden goal! It's a golden goal!" It's a golden goal. And then, of course, the just heartbreak at the end. And I don't think me and my dad said a word to one another on that journey. We drove straight back. Bless him, poor bloke. He drove down in the morning and drove back in the evening. It was brutal. It was raw. But when you watch it back now, just like we had a great day up until up until Mickey Gray. But yeah, less said about that penalty, the better. But yeah, that's definitely my Wembley memory. I remember me and Stephen Hope, good mate of mine from my school days, of Sunderland sponsorship. For all your financial services needs, don't worry, Stephen. My check should be in the post now. I remember we counted out the steps from where the goal would have been to where the penalty spot would have been, and I've got a photograph somewhere from a disposable camera of us just kneeling, having a quiet moment at the penalty spot where Mickey missed from, with loads of people like trying to get to the front for Oasis and to see the Happy Mondays as well, who were supporting them, just going like, "What are these two nutters doing?" That was my real Wembley moment. I mean, by 2019, I think I was. Well, I mean, I was still drinking at the time, so I don't remember any of it, basically.
Thankfully, I don't either. I watched the 98 final. My dad stupidly booked a month-long holiday to Thailand, so I ended up watching it in Phuket, where like everyone goes and just parties, and I had my full gold Sunderland kit on with me navy shorts on, and the Mickey Gray missed the penalty, and I just had like four Thai men and women just pointing and laughing at me in a really embarrassing way. It was absolutely awful, actually. But yeah, no, here we are. We move on. I was only like 13 or something. But James, you're a bit young. You're definitely younger than Pete. What's your favourite Wembley memory?
So I've got two, I would say. I think in 2014, I was like 18 or 19. So that was my first ever like proper weekend away with me friends. I met my uncles down there as well. So it was like a 3 day. And obviously hangovers didn't really affect me. Like I'm 6 months off the drink now, actually. But hangovers didn't affect me at the time. It was just really good. It was like a novelty to be away. We were just drinking in Leicester Square for ages, and all of your mates were coming by. And then that Barini goal was just incredible. So that like weekend and then that goal is pretty much like up there in terms of Wembley moments for me. And then the last time out against Wickham in the League One playoff final, obviously the goals were fantastic, the build up, all of that sort of stuff. But then there was a moment after the game where Niall Quinn's face was shown on the screen, and the whole place just went absolutely mental. And that is one of my absolute favourite Sunderland memories ever, because it was just class, and it was just like, that's what it means to be Sunderland. Everybody was buzzing anyway, and it was brilliant. It was class. It just warmed the cockles of your heart. And then we all started singing Wonderwall afterwards, which was completely random and a little bit bizarre, but strangely really fitting as well. And it's gone down in like Sunderland folklore. So those two, I would say. I mean, there's a little bit of an argument as well for McGeady's equaliser. I know it didn't go the way we wanted in the Checker Trade Trophy, but that, like, the commentary of the stadium shaking was true, because it was just bananas. Like, it was that moment was absolutely crazy, and it was a shame the game sort of ended on penalties the way it did. But definitely Niall Quinn being on the screen, I think, is probably my favourite. Obviously, I watched that from the press box. So in 2014, I was like a pure fan. I was a season ticket holder. I had no inkling that I'd ever become a journalist. I didn't even think I'd go to university, to be honest. I was working at the Chesters at the time. Um, so that to me was everything. I'd never experienced anything like that. Obviously, Sunderland hadn't been at Wembley since 1988 when I was 4, so I had no real recollection of it. So it was like quite exciting, quite new. It was Sunderland's first trip to the new Wembley. And you didn't really know at the time when the next one would come. So it felt really, really special that whole weekend. Obviously gutting to lose, but that moment of Barini's goal, and then like in the build-up as well, the way it happened at Old Trafford in the second leg and all that sort of stuff was just a really special time in my life, I think that.
I can never ever forgive though. And if he wants to go on the podcast, I will forgive him, because I'd love to chat to him, because he was I really liked him when he played for us, but I'll never ever ever be able to forgive Stephen Fletcher for not just passing the ball across the box, or just shooting, or just doing something other than what he did. Like, he was in the gym once in Glasgow, and he must have been just after he left Sunderland. I think, where did he go? Sheffield? I think it was, and it was like just after he just left Marseille, I think.
He went to Stoke,
And he
didn't
was,
he?
oh, that's right, he went to Stoke. Ah, that was right,
Yeah,
Stoke.
yeah.
So he'd gone to Stoke, and it was in between. I think the rumours were like going to Stoke, he'd been to Marseille and stuff like that. And I walked into the gym, pure gym in Hope Street in Glasgow, and I seen him, and I was like, "Oh, it's Fletch." And then my head just went, "Why didn't you just bloody shoot or pass it to Bardo?" And they're like, "You've," because then obviously Navas goes up the pitch, so that's like the abiding memory of it. I'd love to chat to him about it. So if you're listening, Stephen, which I'm sure you are, you're welcome to come on and explain yourself and also talk about all those times you were really good in the derby games, and I really respect you for it. But it's funny that McGeady game because look, I was going through a really really rough time actually. If I'm completely honest, I'll not get too deep, but I was going through a like the roughest time in my life at that point, and it was kind of like I could just do with Sunderland winning, and then Pompey always felt like they were going to equalise that second half, and then they got the second, and you were like, oh, for God's sake, I can't even have this, and the shit cup McShit or whatever it was called then. You know what was it, Checker Trade? And I was like, I can't even have this. And then McGeady scored, and it was like I had that absolute scene, that absolute moment. And then the lad I was with went, "Oh, it's penalties now, though." And I remember going, "I'm not bothered actually. Like, I don't really care if we win this. Like, it'd be nice to get the Wembley hoodoo off our back. But if I'm completely honest, I don't really care. Like, I've had that moment. I'll probably never forget that. In truth, I don't really care if we win this. If we go and get promoted, which of course we know what happened in the worst Wembley memory of all time, 3 months later or so, that kind of moment was just a really good moment for me in terms of having something to clamber onto at the time when I think I wrote a big piece about mental health and remembering where you were when certain things were going through your mind and certain things were happening, both positive and negative. And like without going too deep, because no one wanted to hear a therapy session again, we had that for 5 weeks before the playoffs. It was a really difficult time for me, and that was a moment where I kind of went, okay, life is actually pretty good. Who cares about penalties? I still love Lee Catmull, and I had a t-shirt, a retro shirt on with Catmull 39 on the back, because of course I did, which got pelted with peas by a Portsmouth fan in the local Wetherspoons. I went home early. That wasn't the greatest night after that, but that moment was fantastic. One thing I wanted to speak about, James, is like chatting to Phil yesterday about favourite memories of Wembley from the press box. So there is a different feeling. Like I've done Wembley from the press box. I've done a lot of games myself. I've never done Sunderland. I can't imagine it. And in many ways, I don't know if I'd want to, because I don't know if I would want to be away from it or in it, or I'd be privileged or I'd miss it. I would never really know. But the one question I asked him was about his favourite memories. I want to change that question a bit. Like last time we went, there's a real feeling that we were going to do it and we weren't leaving that ground without winning it. We were going to win that no matter what happened. And as it was, we won it. A lot of that came from the momentum of Alex Neil. And Phil was saying yesterday, look, I think Alex Neil had a big part to play in it. And I 100% agree with him. No matter how that ended, Alex Neil had a huge part in building that momentum. We talked a lot about momentum pre-playoffs this time, and that 5-game defeat. And Reggie's basically being like, I don't care, Joe Anderson playing at left back, all that kind of stuff. But how impressed have you been with Reggie, and you're kind of speaking to him from that period, that last 5 games, up until basically you speak to him after Dan Ballard does an absolute, like, what he does. How impressed have you been with him in that period? His sort of calmness, his ability to not get too high or too low, because I think I said, I can't remember. I think before we appointed Beale, I said some of the managers have to have something. They have to be like Peter Reid, Allardyce. This Regis is the first manager that I would say doesn't fit what I think is really a Sunderland fan, but his calmness actually seems to bring a real calmness to me and other people. But how impressed have you been with him during the playoff period and the period leading up to it, and him not getting too low about those defeats?
I think his temperament is definitely one of his best attributes. I remember Bradford away in pre-season, and Sunderland had lost, and yeah, things weren't moving in the transfer market. And we spoke to Lebris after the game, and he was really, really calm. And I remember saying to Barnsley and Phil in the car on the way back, I was like, he could get eaten up and chewed out and spat out pretty quickly here, because I'm not really sure like he understands the magnitude of what he's walked into. And I was completely wrong, to be honest, because that calmness has turned into a strength, and he was just feeling everybody out, and he was cool and he was calculated and he was looking at his squad, and then he just axed everybody, didn't he? He axed who he didn't want to have within his first team squad, and he built a plan on that. I think he's been hugely impressive tactically. He's delivered really over the course of a season. I know there's a little bit of a complaint maybe around when he makes his subs, but I would argue that's perhaps due to a bit of squad depth. But I just think he does get it and he does understand the area as well. I think he's got that pretty quickly. I think his English has helped. I think he's actually been supported as well by an existing coach and staff, which has really helped. That Mike Dodds was there and could be leaned on during the early part of the season. Michael Proctor knows that squad really well. Barcarini, who's gone from being a goalkeeping coach to a first team coach, he'd been there for a little bit of time as well. So I think the transition's been quite smooth. Obviously, Pedro Ribeiro, the assistant manager, came in a little bit later, but in terms of continuity at the club, I think he's been aided by that. A lot of the playing staff as well have remained the same with a couple of additions, but he is a little bit like Alex Neil in a sense that he just doesn't let anything bother him or phase him. It doesn't really, not that we throw things at him to try and get him to slip up, but occasionally there'll be a journalist from a national newspaper in a press conference, and he might throw something that perhaps I wouldn't ask in, and he just bats it off. He's not really bothered, and if he doesn't want to answer a question, he just won't answer it. He'll just say like, "Well, yeah, it's good," or he might not be available, or he might be available. He's good in that sense, but also as well, like underrated about Lebris. And I'm going off on a bit of a tangent. He's actually quite funny. Like he's really, really quite amusing. Like he has a little bit of a joke, and he's quite dry. And I think that actually like connects with people from Sunderland in a sense that we are quite dry people, aren't we? And we're quite, almost sarcastic. And Lebris is a bit like that, but it's all about results and fair play to him. He's got them this season, and the cojones he's shown actually to drop Mepham and put Ballard in. Like we all knew Ballard was a really good defender, but he's been out injured a long time. But to do that, like I wouldn't have done that. I don't think many people in Sunderland, if you'd have done a straw poll before the playoffs, said like drop Chris Mepham and put Ballard in. I don't think a lot of people, given Ballard's injury record and how little he's played this season and how, for the large part of the season, good Mepham's been, I don't think many people would have done that. So, and going right back as well, Eliza Mayenda. Eliza Mayenda's been at Hibs. He's not done too well. He's played predominantly under 21s football. Yeah, there's a raw talent there. And Lebris has looked at him, gone, aye, we'll have some of him. We'll play him. He's going to be good. And it's turned out to be, and he's managed him perfectly. And I just think stuff like that, you can't really fault him on because he's clearly got a good eye for a player. He's clearly got a good eye for a system. And he's handled the media really well. I can't speak highly enough of him. And I think even if we don't go up, I think we've got a real gem. I've just sort of done me ode to Regis Lebris there, haven't I? He can do no wrong in my eyes at the moment. Those 5 games, I was pretty miffed with them because we were losing, but but now all is well again.
No manager's going to be perfect in the Championship, and he's not going to be perfect in I think it's his third full season as a manager.
Yeah,
I think if you remember that, like, and I know he's had a lot of experience. I think he's 48, so he's not a young man. But in terms of a manager, he's really youthful. This is only his second club he's had. I really like the fact that he sticks behind his principles and he just goes, just chill out, just calm down. It's going to be all right. Because we are a fan base. I'm a fan that can sometimes lose my head a little bit. But it's funny you said about him being dry.
Hysterical. We're all completely hysterical at times.
Oh, of course
like
we are.
It lurches from the sublime to the subdued, doesn't it? And the like chaotic, really. Like this club, it goes from being in crisis to the best thing in the world in like 3 games.
Traveling about, I can find myself staring out of a train window or an aeroplane window or something like that. I try not to do when I'm driving because it's the autobahn and people will die. When I'm staring out of a train window or a plane window, and I'm like, well, if this happens and that happens and that happens, I mean, surely Europa League football would come our way. Now, how would I plan who do we want in our group? Obviously a German team because that's where I live. But I'd love one of the Spanish teams. We could do that. I mean, how do we do a podcast from there? And and then all I've realized I've lost like 4 hours of my life dreaming about like a series of scenarios that you couldn't. I mean, there's no bookie would give you odds on them.
One of my mates once famously said to me after we signed Seb Larson, Craig Gardner, and Connor Wickham that there's no reason we shouldn't be pushing for Europe.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree.
Seb Larson, love him. Craig Gardner, probably the best thing he did was getting an away coach to see us beat the Mags 3-0 because it wasn't his penalty at Old Trafford, which I pretty much put my house on. I went, well, if there's one thing he can do, it's put this in top corner. Oh, God, it's gone about 40 yards over the bar. It's funny you said about Regis Lebris being dry. I think it was the Coventry first leg when they were asking, big win, and all this kind of stuff. And he went, well, after the plan that we've had, And he like winked at the camera and went, the 5 games. It was like brilliant, like really, really good timing, to be fair.
He rocked up in his first press conference. I was there, and he goes, "Well, we're not going to play like Man City or Real Madrid." I'm paraphrasing slightly. I can't remember exactly what teams he said, but he turned up, looked at us, shrugged, was all French, and went, "Well, we're not going to play like Man City. We're not going to play like Real Madrid. We're going to play like Sunderland because this is Sunderland, and I am Regis Lebris." And I was just like, "My God, like you better start backing it up." But he did, in fairness. Like he's, I think, as well as that, he's a really nice guy as well. Like Alex Neil, to be honest. I'm not saying that he wasn't a nice guy, but I was very afraid of that man just because he used to eat journalists up, and I was thankful that it wasn't actually my job to ask him questions because he was spiky at times. But with Lebris, you feel like you can just about ask him anything, and sometimes he will not really give you much of an answer. But I think like the door's open with Lebris, which is quite nice.
The more that the Alex Neil situation's died down a bit, the more I find myself laughing, especially in his playoff era. And I'm looking back at the playoff highlights from when he was in charge. And I know he did a bad thing, but look, I think I wouldn't say my mind changed, but he played for Hamilton Accies. He wouldn't have made much money there. I think it's quite clear why he ended up going to Stoke. And let's just say there was a guest on the show about 3 months ago that would pretty much allude to that. So I can kind of half understand it. Still think he made the wrong decision, but look, we're no worse off. I think the point I was going to make is when I go back, how much I laugh at him when they say like, "Oh, Chef Wed's going to be a really intimidating atmosphere. Like, how are you going to handle that?" And he's like, "What they're going to do? Buh." It's like perfect mindset for the perfect time. And obviously, Regis is very, very different in that sense. But I think fantastic. Talking about calmness, though, James. Before I move on to the listener questions, there's one part that I need to ask because I realized I didn't ask for it yesterday. Me and Pete did the Dan Ballard moment to death. I think it'll be the greatest moment of my life, if I'm honest, apart from when I get married, of course, next year. Ashley, if you're listening. When Dan Ballard puts that in, when Dan Ballard puts that in, clearly it's complete and utter chaos. But what was the scenes like afterwards? Because sometimes they're the most fun bit when you see the players, their excitement. We've seen what it was like on the pitch when it kind of calms down. There's a video you've got, I think, on your TikTok of the players and their families at the end, and they've all just beaming smiles on the face. It must be like 11:15 at night, 11:30. Like, what was the aftermath like when the bodies weren't flying about and when the atmosphere had calmed down slightly and people had gone home and gone back to their families?
No, that was really amazing actually, and it was a privilege just to sort of be around and see that like Joe Bellingham was on the pitch with his dad. They went into the centre circle and they were having like a long chat. His mother was there. They were so excited and proud. I think all
They
of
didn't
Remain
mention Dortmund, did they? Please tell me they
No,
didn't
they
mention
didn't. They
Dortmund.
didn't. They didn't. I was listening out, but Remain Mundle was there with his family and his brother is like the spitting image of him. I think he plays for Norwich, but you could put them next to each other and you wouldn't be able to tell. But they were all there celebrating. They were on the pitch. Dan Neil came out of the tunnel and his dad was in the stand waiting for him, and they just went straight up to each other and hugged each other. That was like, to watch that from afar was really heartwarming. And like Dan Neil came to do the interview and like he actually hugged us, which I was really surprised by because you sort of have this like metal wall up between like player and journalist. Obviously, you're not going to go around like slapping each other on the arse and hugging each other and all of that sort of stuff. But he sort of came over to Barnsley, and when you do that, like it's not a handshake, but you clasp hands, and it's like that sort of like greeting, like from side to side. And he did that with Barnsley and sort of like touched Barnsley on the shoulder and then turned towards me. And I just sort of looked at him and went like, "What the F was that? That was crazy." And he went, "I know," and sort of like hugged us. And I was like, that was a bit strange. But it was just sort of the exhilaration of it all. And you could tell that he was like completely emotionally on a high. And then he tried to get through an interview with us all. And to be fair to him, he did a very good job. But it was just so emotional, but in the best possible way. And I think that is like the one slight worry, isn't it? Is that can they go again? I actually think they can. I think they've had enough time, and I think they'll be focused on the job. Obviously, we can talk about the celebration police and people saying that we thought it was all done, and fans of rival clubs. It's complete and utter bollocks, if you don't mind me saying, because that group knew it wasn't done, but they just experienced a really unifying, important moment in their young careers. And to sort of not celebrate that and to not get excited about it would just be ridiculous and not at all what football is about. But yeah, that sort of stuff is a real privilege to witness, like the pitch side stuff. I don't know if people know how it works, but so I'll work alongside Phil Smith, but Phil will go and speak to Regis Labrise in the press conference, whereas Sunderland have started to do the player pitch side now. So I'll go down with Barnsley and we'll sort of split it up and then send each other the relevant audio files and that. So you get to be in the tunnel and, you see players walking past and occasionally ownership and stuff like that. So as a Sunderland fan, it's a real privilege to get that sort of glimpse behind the curtain. Stuff like the last day of the season as well, when you've got like Isidore and Ballard's kids wandering around, and it makes it all very human. And I think that's why, especially with the players that have played for Sunderland for a long time or have come up through the academy, you do, as a journalist, get a little bit protective of them because you know them, you see them about, and you speak to them. You're not, as I say, you're not bosom buddies with them, but you get a feeling and a sense of how much it means to them, and ultimately that they're just people as well. They're human beings. They might have a bit more money than us, and they might do a highly pressurized job compared to some of us. But when you wash it all down, they're just skin and bone, and they've got feelings like the rest of us.
But yeah, so you said brilliant stuff. Just to say, mate, I mean, look, I've been lucky enough in my career to cover World Cups, European Championships, and some European leagues. I've like Graham, I've never covered a Sunderland match, and I also don't know if I would like to, because I know I couldn't keep it together professionally to do it. So I do think you do a fantastic job, and especially as somebody who's a million miles away from Sunderland far too often, quite often far too far away than I'd like to be at important times. You do an amazing job of keeping the likes of me in the loop and on what you were saying about those things you're going to be doing down in London at Trafalgar Square and at Covent Garden. That's what I'm going to be hoovering up when I'm in Guangzhou. Because I love that, because that's what I'm missing, So thank you very much for the job you do there. And yeah, I mean, I just want to see Barnsley all in tweed, given the big old dap there.
It's it's a privilege. Obviously, I'm from Sunderland. I'm a Sunderland fan growing up, but like it's also very hard at times. Like when that Ballard goal went in, it was sort of masked by how crazy the atmosphere was in the Stadium of Light. But like I did celebrate that more than I should have. I screamed at the top of my lungs. As I say, thankfully it was like washed out, but it's tough. Sometimes you're in a privileged position, but you're watching the scenes unfold and you're like, like I wouldn't mind being in there. I think I came on, Graham, after the Hull City game on Boxing Day. Michael Beale had won away from home, Jack Clark, and like that away end, you were in that away end that day, and I was just like, that looked like an old timer. That looked class. It's like a really compact, like loyalty point away day, 2,000 of them there. And I remember watching it from the other side of the ground in the press box thinking like, I really like to be in that madness now. So it does come with its downsides, but like as a job, it's amazing. And to be there like at Wembley and get to cover it, like the history of the Echo and stuff is not lost on me. The history of the football club is definitely not lost on me. So to be like in that lineage it's amazing, really, and a dream come true.
Great
funny
institution.
you mentioned about.
Continue.
It's funny that you mentioned that about. I said I've never covered something. I've covered one game, and lo and behold, it was Fleetwood at home when Max Power scored in the 97th minute. And at the time, Barnsley was sat behind me. You had Connor Bromley, who at the time was working for the club. Good old Con. Hope you're well, Connor, if you're listening. People will remember this, but Joey Barton's given it full pelt, as he would be.
Oh, I remember that game. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sitting there, my only game I've covered was Sunderland, and I thought, if we bag here, I'm going to celebrate, but we're never bagging in a month of Sundays. And then Max Power did. And it's funny, Barnsley and Connor Bromley were close enough for me to celebrate, and we all kind of bounced up. And the Fleetwood media guy was going, it's unprofessional. And I decided the minute that I got home, I can never cover Sunderland. But I spoke about it with Phil yesterday. I think, it's a really interesting perspective when you get to see them a bit more as human. Like, it's different to me in the sense of I'm covering Rangers and Celtic predominantly and Scotland and teams that, me, myself, I would say like I have a big respect for all of them, especially for Scotland as a national team because it's the place I live. But I'm an England fan. I'm a Sunderland fan. It'll never be quite like that. But it's interesting when you see the emotion of, two massive football clubs, Celtic and Rangers, and you see certain players will get a lot of stick for certain things, and you see them as humans afterwards, and you see like how much they're hurt and how much it means to them, how much they want to win games and they haven't won games. Like the aftermath of the Scottish Cup final 3-3, absolutely incredible game of football. Rangers losing on penalties, one penalty miss, and speaking of Jack Butland after that, you see the emotions that come from it.
Yeah.
When it comes to Sunderland and Dan Ballard moments and all that kind of stuff. But look, we'll get into some listeners' questions. A lot of them about shaving, and I'm not going to say whether it's you or Phil, but I'll get on.
I'll answer them all.
Good question. Good question from Union Berlin, man. Do we expect 4-4-2 versus 4-4-2? Will Reggie Slabreese be happy to take the game to extra time if Mundle has 30 minutes in him?
It's a good question. The tactical debate is one of the things that's sort of keeping us up at night. Obviously, Sunderland are really good defensively in a 4-4-2, and we countered quite well against Sheffield United at the Stadium of Light on New Year's Day when we won 2-1. Mayanda and Isidore both scored and assisted each other. That was the first time Labrie sort of sprung that. So I wonder if that's in his mind, and I wonder if that's in Wilder's mind as well. I just think that 4-3-3 might be the way to go, obviously with Enzo in the middle if Mundle is fit. I would prefer to see that just because I think it gives us a little bit of a better foothold in the game. Out of possession, they actually go 4-4-2 when we line up 4-3-3. I think Enzo Lefebvre is key. It's been said a lot, but if we can get him on the ball in the middle, he can unlock doors for us. I think this notion we have that he's going to be this number 10, I do find that a little bit inaccurate because I don't think Sunderland play with a number 10. We play with three in the middle when we play 4-3-3. Yes, one of those three midfielders is a little bit further forward, but it's by no means a 10. I know Regis Labrie has referenced him as playing as a 10, so I'd be interested if he does play in the middle, whether he does sort of play that rig role where he's scuttling and he's like the most advanced number 8, or whether he does play as a number 10. I think that's really, really interesting. So like the tactical minutiae around this game are really fascinating because two managers know each other. They've played each other twice. There was a mixed bag of results. You could argue Labrie did a number on him at the Stadium of Light. So, yeah, interesting. The extra time question, I think, given Sunderland sort of the way it went against Coventry, I don't think they'd have anything to fear from extra time. Will they play for it? I don't think so. I don't think you could go to Wembley and like play for extra time and penalties, can you? I don't think you can do that. I think you've got to try and win it in 90 minutes. But then if you do get to extra time, obviously Sunderland have a little bit of experience. So yeah, the tactical debate I do find fascinating. And I do wonder about Mundle, and this, I've got no insider information on this, but I do wonder if somebody might be being a little bit coy somewhere and there might be a few games afoot. I would love to see it. They went all shithousery against Coventry, didn't they, with the advertising boards. And I heard as well, I don't know if it was true, actually, I couldn't get it verified, but somebody said to me that Frank Lampard doesn't like small spaces or something like that, and he complained about a small space when he was Everton manager. So Sunderland made some sort of tunnel area where Frank Lampard was going to be a lot smaller. I don't know if it was true. I couldn't get it verified, but that was told to me when I arrived at the ground before the second leg. So they do like a bit of housery nowadays, Sunderland. So you just wonder if the Mundle thing is as bad as it first feared. I don't know. We'll have to see come the team sheet. But he hasn't featured in any of the training pictures, has he? But is that Sunderland throwing us off the scent? I don't know.
I think it's great that we're getting onside with that. I feel like we've been on the receiving end. I think for so many years, Sunderland have just been too nice. And, you know, and I think that's very much with Regis as well, like the way that he has this very calm and things like that. But I've said before in the pod, I've just got to fit the still waters run deep with that man. And you see it in the passion when it's gone well. And I do like that he's allowing, well, let's face it, a bit of the dark arts. So good for him. How it works.
I don't know if you can verify this actually, James, but I heard that the idea to put the advertising holdings further forward was pushed by Luke O'Nien and Dan O'Neill. That was originally their idea to maybe change that.
I hadn't heard that, but if so, I think that's quite clever. And to be honest, I don't think it made any difference because the throw-ins, he still had a fair bit of, because I was pitch side before the game and after, he still had a fair amount of room to get those throw-ins in, to be honest. But I just think it was psychological. It was like, well, the winding us up a little bit here, and with it being Coventry and that needle and all of that sort of stuff, and at times both games did spill over, didn't they, given the tension and stuff like that. There was an incident, was with the goalkeeper and Job, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So all of those things come into it. But yeah, I agree with Pete. I'm over the years with the gamesmanship and the time wasting, haven't they? So it's nice that the shoe's on the other foot occasionally.
We should have just delayed the kickoff by 15 minutes. I would have still been all for that. But Pete, maybe a question for you
Yeah, I
here.
know.
Will it be classed as a failure of a campaign should we lose the playoff final, considering the first part of the season had us in the automatic place for promotion?
Ouch, that is a question, isn't it? I have to
Nah.
say no. I have to say no because I said it at the top of it is I'm incredibly proud of this bunch of players, this group of players. Obviously, not getting promotion means that almost certainly some of those aren't going to be there next year. I think even with promotion, which it looks like some of them might not be there, or at least one of them might not be there. We'll have to wait and see what that comes about. But I don't think you can write off as a failure this season. It would be a huge disappointment. That's all I would say about it. But I hope we never have to even contemplate that. But it would be a disappointment. I don't think you can put it down as a failure because myself, I picked us to it right back in August or wherever it was. I said sixth. Really, I thought if we scrape into the playoffs, I'd be happy. The season we've had, which has been one of the most fun seasons I followed Sunderland, really enjoyed it,
Yeah.
and I'll have those memories. No, Sheffield United can't take those memories away from me.
No, I feel the same way. I think, when it comes to the game itself, I know some fans won't want to hear this, but Sheffield United should beat us. They finished 20 points ahead of us. They've got clearly a stronger squad. I think Phil made a really good point on the pod the other day about if Sheffield United brings someone on, they're going to be a good, high quality championship. If we bring someone on, not all of them will be. Some of them will be. Like, if you go 4-5-1 and you bring on a Mayenda or a Wilson, like they're two really good championship strikers. They can make a difference, but they're going to need to make a difference. Like Sheffield United can bring on Tom Cannon, who cost them 30 million. I know he's not really hit the ground running, but what I'm trying to say is Sheffield United finished 20 points above us for a reason. And I know there's an argument to say, oh, well, KLD should have spent more in January and so on and so forth. I'm really pleased he didn't spend 30 million and splash loads of money on Tom Cannon because we might still go up. And I think if we don't, it's going to be by a 90-minute game or a penalty or whatever it may be. Sheffield United on paper are the favourites, and there's no shame in losing to Sheffield United, if I'm completely honest. There would have been shame in losing to Coventry because shame when you lose to Coventry. But I think when it comes to Sheffield United, Sheffield United, Burnley or Leeds, we all kind of said, look, there's one of them that you might have to face in the playoff final. We are going to be facing them. If we beat them, it's a phenomenal achievement. It's a phenomenal season, and there's going to have to be a bloody good performance. But we've beaten them once this season. Not to say we can't. We definitely can. And we tactically got better. We tactically beat them as well. We kind of sprung something a bit different. They couldn't handle Mayenda or Isidore that night. But I just think, look, if Sheffield United beat us, if we're classing that as failure, I'm not saying you're wrong because that's your opinion and you're more than entitled to it. But for me personally, absolutely not. I think the season's been fantastic. I think it's going to be really difficult. We're already seeing stuff about Job and Dortmund. And I think, look, as much as I think Sunderland are the biggest and best club in the world, unfortunately, some people don't always agree with me. And Real Madrid and Borussia Dortmund are apparently a little bit bigger and offer something a little bit more exciting. I don't know what they mean by that, but, I'm not there to argue. Like I say, it's just your opinion. If you think Real Madrid and Borussia Dortmund are bigger than Sunderland, that's fair enough, but you are wrong. But I think we are going to
Yeah,
lose
but
some players.
Madrid and Dortmund don't have Josephs, so I mean,
Right.
what could a player want?
Or the Bamford. I
Yeah,
think
exactly.
Well, hey, look, and we've seen Jude. Jude flies over for his pink slice. He's there more often. I
right.
mean, he's probably watched more Sunderland games than he has Madrid games this year.
And I feel
And from
with
from the
Jude,
stands, because he's played most of the ones for Madrid, but he's probably watched more Sunderland games as a fan this year than any other team.
it's also fair to say Jude actually had to watch quite a few Michael Beale games, so he's done the hard yards. He understands what it's like to support something that's it's one of some
He's,
of its
he's
lowest
earned
ebbs.
it.
True fan.
He's earned it. I just think ultimately, look, I think we will lose some players. We might lose players whether we go up or not. I think if we go up, there's some players are going to be hard to hold on to. But I think you wrote a piece the other day, James, about the strength of the fan base. I think if you look back 5 years ago, players that were coming to the club, and I don't want to dig anyone out because I like these players. I genuinely like them. It's got nothing to do with wanting to get a couple of them on the podcast at all. But Chris Maguire, like Tom Flanagan, they were players that at the time probably needed a move from the club anyway. They knew those divisions very well, and they've seen someone come along and they went, "Oh God, okay, like this could be great. Like, I think I'm not being mean towards Chris Maguire and I'm not being mean towards Tom Flanagan and other players, but there was a lot of players that joined Sunderland where the pinnacle of their career was it something that I spoke to Jack Baldwin on this podcast about it, and Jack Baldwin went, it took me a while to go, hang on, I'm playing for Sunderland. Like, this is massive. I think you were scrambling around for players, some of which turned out to be very, very good. But the only ones that really massively stood out, like McGeady, had been at a bigger level. And when he came, he thought it might be a promotion back to the Premier League. When you look at it now, yeah, we may lose players, and yeah, I don't want to lose the playoff final. Like, I really don't, but I'm calm and understanding and knowing that we're going in the right direction because, like I say, when you wrote that piece the other day, James, about the fan base and how much they're helping Speakman's job, I 100% agree with it because I think, look, it's not just the Ballard moment. There's been loads of good moments at the stadium this season. The atmosphere of the Leeds game was absolutely rocking. The celebration after the Leeds game was great. The Middlesbrough celebrations, both home and away. You're seeing a connection between genuine superstars in terms of Joe Bellingham. And yes, I know some of that will be because he's a connection to his brother, but it doesn't matter how he got to be the kind of big name. He is a big name and he chose Sunderland over his boyhood club because he felt Sunderland could be the right place for him to go on to the next stage, which may or may not be the likes of Borussia Dortmund or something like that. There'll be other people going, hang on a minute, we got a couple, your Dennis Serkins and your younger players that are in the squad now looking, going, actually, there's something going on with Sunderland there after we won, I think it was the Papa Johns and did all right with Lee Johnson. Then we got a couple more when Alex Neil came in, we got the promotion and people seen Wembley. People will be looking now at the likes of not just Joe Bellingham, not just your Chris Riggs, they'll be looking at the likes of Ahmad, who came back after a one season loan and going, yeah, I tell you what, mind, if Sunderland get this right, and they've got a good chance of, I don't know, if we have, the worst case scenario is we might lose a couple of players that we've become really connected to, which are going to be big losses. There'll be big money in the bank, and there'll be players that are attracted to playing for Sunderland because of what is going on at Sunderland at the moment. And hey, look, it might not be winning the Champions League, but it's certainly going in the right direction. It will entice and attract players. And if we go up, well, that's just fucking great anyway, isn't it? So there's absolutely nothing to lose with this game. But look, I've got a couple of silly questions that I guaranteed I would get in before I'm going back to the pool. And I'm going to go in there, swim and enjoy my hot sun a little bit. My more relaxation. Don't mean to make anyone jealous. But right, I'll give you the first silly one, Pete, because look, Ian's been asking me to ask this for ages and I'm going to have to ask it. If you could have dogs for feet, dogs wouldn't be harmed. Their legs would walk for you. What dog breed would you choose?
I was hoping I was going to get that one. I saw it come in. Dachshund, and I don't know why. I honestly have no idea why. I just think having two sausage dogs on my feet would be really, really funny. And those tiny little legs having to scamper around for me to walk on them. Yeah, I mean, I have a lovely little Westie, Zappa, my best mate. But yeah, no, I wouldn't want Westies on my feet. I think that I want, because they just go wherever they want. So I'll have two Dachshunds, please.
I would go, well, you don't want something too big, do you? Because then you'd be like looking a bit weird and you'll probably get hip problems. You don't want anything too small, although a terrier is fast and like the non-stop energy. So, you'd probably be able to turn with some pace.
But I'm just thinking of how those tiny little legs would move you, and like they would be going at such a clip with this. I mean, I'm not a big fat lad and I'm not a big tall lad, but like you'd be going at such a clip as you were being moved along that I just think it would be quite I mean, how long are we talking about? Is this a permanent thing, or like have I got it for like a day, an afternoon? I'll take it for an afternoon.
I don't think Ian's got this through properly, has he?
He hasn't specified because
Ian, come back with more parameters, please. We need more on this. But I'm going Dachshund and
shout out to Ian and Paul Dobson as well because they are legends.
Absolute legend, really.
Big fan. The other question is from Bowers. We always like to get a Bowers question in, James. Can you tell Phil to actually shave his tash?
I can't tell him that explicitly, no, because he might fall out with me. But what I will say is that he's a braver man than me because I don't think I can pull that off. So more power to him. He looks good. Let him crack on, I say.
I think I like about Phil's tash is that when I look at Phil's tash, I understand what music he likes and I think the music is good. Like, I know I could go, Phil, let's discuss Tom Waits. And he'd be like, yeah, let's discuss Tom Waits. And I just know for a fact that that would be the case. But Pete, I'll leave another one for you. That's about a stat, asking if it's correct. I don't know if it is. Oh, I've run out of questions. Oh, I've run out of questions. I'm going to have to go back, James, unfortunately. If we win, will you shave your beard off?
I will not do that. But I tell you what, I tell you what, if we win and go to and go to the Premier League, I'll shave me head and not me beard, guaranteed. And I'll donate 50 quid to Peter Oliver's Great North Run if we win at Wembley. I will do that. No bother at all.
If we lose, I
Good
will
man,
rob.
James. Yeah.
If we lose, you can
If
all
we
go to
lose,
hell because I'm hibernating for the next 12 months.
if we lose, I'm robbing Pete.
At
Yeah,
gunpoint.
well, why not? Away the lads and look, enjoy it, boys. Look, that's the thing, man. I remember that there's thousands and tens of thousands of people who wish they could be there. Um, you know, it was just unavoidable that I couldn't do it. It's too important for lots of things because I've got a mortgage and a house that I built that I didn't realize how much it was going to cost. So I'm here. I have to be here, otherwise I'll be homeless. But no, I'm really jealous of you going and everybody go and have a great time. Enjoy it, savor it, because these don't come along as often as they might think. I mean, I had to wait ages. 92 to 98 is a long time to wait. And from 98 until when was that next one? Was it 2014?
Yeah.
2014, that's a long old wait. And you know, the good thing, all I will say is I've been abroad when they've done well. I was in Kiev during the Maidan Revolution in 14 for that one. I remember watching it with a taxi driver called Volodya. In his taxi next to the Maidan Square, and then when they won in 2022, I was in Ischia with my wife as she was schmoozing for her job, and I wasn't allowed to. I had to be there. So anyway, so they've won when I've been abroad. That's all we'll say. Let's get it done.
And while you're
And
enjoying it, don't let anybody tell you that you can't enjoy it and shouldn't be enjoying it. Let go, let
Thanks.
loose, and just crack on and enjoy being Sunderland.
most importantly, in the great words of Neil Warnock, enjoy it, but
By
enjoy
being
it by being fucking disciplined.
Yeah,
Class.
that's a good point, actually. That's a really, really good point. Do enjoy it by being disciplined because there's not worse than like a severely hungover Wembley crowd, which is what we did for the
Yeah,
Charlton. And like enjoy it at Trafalgar Square, but don't like
be
fizzle out.
disciplined.
Don't fizzle out too early because I genuinely think it can have a detrimental effect. Like we need voices against Sheffield United. We really do. And if everybody's too hungover, then that voice is a bit muted.
Yeah, valid point.